Alrighty. Howdy do. Welcome everybody. We are back. Chapter 39, Planet Purgatory of Beelzebub's Tales to His Grandson by George Ivanovic Gurdjieff. Thank you for coming to this live stream. If you would like to help support these works, one-time donation by PayPal, you can subscribe on Ko-fi, or you can become a YouTube member. In fact, we even got some crypto stuff going on now. Maybe I'll gotta put the coin wallets in the description nowadays. I'll do that later. Become a crypto warrior, everybody. Something. I hate taxes. Now, last week we got about, I don't think even we made it halfway through this chapter. So this is part 2, and I was just looking at it again. And I'm like, man, this is long. This may be the first, like, part 3 we do, where we don't even get all the way through it on this one. But let's keep diving into it, guys. Let's keep diving into it. So last time we were talking about the sun absolute and the huge expanse of infinite ether acrylno that was then developed, or through the law of the 3 and the 7, Tre Manzi Kamno and Heptaparapashinok, these laws then allowed for arisings, different cosmoses, cosmos being order, out of the ether acrylno. Everyone can hear me okay, right? My fan's not too loud? No one said anything yet, so I assume so. So we're going through, basically this chapter is like the creation of the world. And we've reached we got to page 183, or at least in this 879 in this PDF that I'm using here. If you want to use the same PDF as me, you can just go to this site, gurdjieff.org. Scroll right down to the bottom, and in library there's primary text. That's where you get the same PDF that I'm using. So we reached this "and so my boy," and that's where we're just gonna pick right off. By the way, hi everyone in the chat there. Tyler, Blue Eyes White Dragon. Did you just become a member recently, Blue Eyes? But Tyler's been here for a while. You upgraded your membership to Gnostic Hierophant now, it seems. Congrats, boys. Congrats. We got Voice in the chat as well. See how many other usual suspects piled in later on. Now, let's just jump right into it. And so, my boy, thanks to this new system of reciprocal feeding of everything existing in the universe, in which our most holy sun absolute itself participated, because remember the holy sun absolute was, for some reason, even though it's absolute and eternal, was decreasing. And so to stop it from decreasing, it started creation. And creation is its own play. But the higher being bodies are almost like something that comes out of creation, and then the higher being bodies go into the sun absolute and participate in this play. I guess the most holy sun absolute, not the most, it's most. And participate in this plane, the holy sun absolute, and that's what keeps it vivified and big, and it doesn't diminish as long as there's a constant flow of higher being bodies being coated and then being absorbed into the holy sun absolute. So this is our aim. Our aim is to get to the absolute so we can hang out with all of the other cool kids. In a way, you can think about it, you know how people say, like, magic's just kindergarten, then you go on to this real thing, or, Christianity's a kindergarten, then you go into Buddhism, or Buddhism is kindergarten, then you go to Vajrayana. It's like, no. The entirety of creation is kindergarten. And when we get to the absolute, that's when the real school begins. So that's where the real dogs are, the big dogs are. That's where we're aiming for. So most holy sun absolute itself participated. There was established in that equilibrium, which at the present time no longer gives the merciless Kiropas. Kiropas is time, but objective time. So, subjective time is, how do we measure time? A revolution of the Earth and the Earth going around the sun. Problem being is if the speed of the Earth going around the sun changed, we just wouldn't know. or the revolution changes, we just wouldn't know because that's what our standard of measuring time. We don't have any measurements, we just compare things. So Heropass isn't a comparison, it isn't a subjective time calculation. Heropass is objective time. Time itself was destroying God. And so God, to fight time, started creation. Which is kind of interesting, because it's like you think of gods of time like Kronos, and then like the gods that fight against Kronos. Anyway, I'm going to get off on a tangent here. Let's keep going. Let's plow through. Any possibility of bringing about anything unforeseen whatsoever to our most great and most Holy Son Absolute, and thus the motive for the divine anxiety of our almighty uni-being endlessness concerning the wholeness of his eternal place of dwelling, disappeared forever. So disappeared forever, so he's... God no longer has anxiety, bro. God is over the teenage years. He's no longer anxious. Everything's set up right and he's all good. Here it is necessary to tell you that when this most wise divine actualization was finished, our triumphant cherubim and seraphim then gave for the first time to all the newly arisen actualizations those names which exist even until today. Every relatively independent concentration, so an independent concentration is just a being. It can be a planet, can be some system of order, but humans are a concentration within the film of nature. So every relatively independent, nothing is actually independent. You're not independent because if you stopped eating, you're dependent on food. Everyone's dependent on food because if you just stopped eating, you'd die. But we're relatively independent. Every relatively independent concentration in general, they then defined by the word cosmos. Okay, so they're actually going to talk about not just human beings, microcosmoses. Now we're going to get the tier rank ordering of the proper cosmoses. So before this, it was just megalocosmos and then the different worlds. But now we're rank ordering the worlds, everyone. Competitive ranked ordering of different systems of order. This is interesting. In Hermetics, there's this too, macrocosm and microcosm. But Gurdjieff has 7. Protocosmos. Is he going to get into this? So I'm just looking a little forward, and I'm pretty sure the cosmoses that he gives later, at least Ouspensky, talks about protocosmos, aeocosmos, macrocosmos, deuterocosmos, mesocosmos, microcosmos, and tritocosmos, but we'll see how he unfolds them. Because there's all the different independent laws come onto each other, and it gets very complicated. But anyway, let's see what's up. Let's see what's up, guys. Let's see what's up. Cosmos, and to distinguish the different orders of arising of these cosmoses, they added to this definition cosmos, order, a separate corresponding name. And namely, they named the most holy prime source sun absolute itself, protocosmos. So that's interesting. So the absolute sun, maybe his sovereign endlessness is beyond it, but the absolute itself is the protocosmos in Gurdjieff's system. So this is interesting, because the aeocosmos, at least from my understanding, is like the entire universe, and then like a macrocosmos is a galaxy, and then I forget mesocosmos, deuterocosmos. One's a solar system, one's a planet, and then the microcosmos is the human, and tritocosmos being the moon or the abyss. But it's interesting, you can see all the different cosmoses, or at least partially. But the protocosmos, we don't see at all. It's the sun absolute itself. The absolute itself. The thing that Hegel's entire philosophy hinges on. Or, not hinges on. Hegel's entire philosophy is about creating some kind of rational system of idealism that can encapsulate the absolute itself. So, that's interesting. Anyway, each newly arisen second-order sun, with all its consequent definite results, they called deuterocosmos. That's a new word. That's a different word to what I guess Gurdjieff would eventually But it's hard because he wrote Gurdjieff wrote Beelzebub, like, as I understand it, like over a long period of time. So at one point he would have taught Ouspensky, and Ouspensky teaches the seven cosmoses, and so is this part? But this seems really late in the work. Or did he write this part first, and then other preceding parts come next? Is this basically what I'm asking is this more of a blueprint of the seven cosmoses to come, or? Because you don't see this this term very often. So just any newly arisen second-order sun is called a deuterocosmos. Third-order suns, i.e. those we now call planets, are called tritocosmos. Oh, okay, so tritocosmos ain't just moons. They're planets. So this is interesting. This is interesting. So this is something different from how I learned it, guys. So my dog's barking. Let me just close the front door. I'll be right back. Let me use the be right back screen. Sorry about that. Tripping balls there. Ugh. Okay, sorry about that. That was embarrassing. Yeah. So I'm just reading chat now. The chat that I was ignoring. At the end of the day, I wasn't like saying anything important because I got like ultra anal about the seven cosmoses, and I was just like, no, I need to go, and just started looking them up instead of reading. So we didn't miss anything because I was muted. It was just me being autistic. Okay. Well, maybe the names I learned were just wrong then. Okay. So, let's just go back here. Let's go back. Each newly arisen... So we got the protocosmos, right? We got the deuterocosmos, and then we got triterocosmos. So we got this layer of... we got this three layers. So the absolute ejects out of its suns, and then suns have planets around them, and then on planets, the smallest relatively independent formation on the planets, which arose thanks to the new inherency of the fifth Stapinter of the sacred heptaparaparshinok, and which is the very smallest similarity to the whole, was called microcosmos. So then, on the planets, we get the microcosmoses. We get the humies. And also, thank you, Tyler, for the $5 for reminding me to unmute. Very, whoopsie. And finally, those formations of the microcosmos, and which also become concentrated on the planets, this time thanks to the second order cosmic law called the mutual attraction of the similar, were named tetartocosmoses. Tetartocosmoses, okay. And all those cosmoses which together compose our present world began to be called the megalocosmos. So then, all the cosmoses together are called megalocosmos. Very interesting. And then, also our cherubim gave names, also existing until now, to the emanations and radiations issuing from all these cosmoses of different scales, by means of which the process of the most great cosmic trogo-alto-ego-crat proceeds. Juan, the emanation of the most holy sun absolute itself, they called, as I have already told you, Theomert or Word God. The radiation of each of the separate second-order suns is Mente Kit Son. Okay. Mentek It. And it's the H and the Z next to each other, which is hard. Chz Owen. Mentek It Chzon. Chz. Because you want to go ch and then just go into a vowel, but you got to go chz Owen. Mentek It Chzon. Mentek It Chzon. Makes you just kind of like, you just gotta like say Mentek It and then just like jolt your diaphragm for the Chzon. We got some more zones coming up, Jesus. The radiation, Word God goes hard, hell yeah. Shmish. The radiation of each planet separately, they called Dian Am Zone, and that given off from the microcosmos, they call Photoin Zoin. Okay, that's interesting. So out of the most holy sun absolute comes the word of God. The emanation, the Theomert Malogos, the word of God. Is this going to be like another word for the ray of creation? Here, thank you, Blue Eyes White Dragon. Here from there, plane from planet. What separates these? The letter T. Oh yeah. And there, from here is the letter T. Is the universe just one song? Yes, the universe is one song. Oh, True River King in the chat. Men Tech Gits Zoin. Okay, Zoin. So the I with an umlauts on top of them makes an in. So Dian Amau Muzoin is the other emanation. So now we're talking about, so yeah, also to answer Blue Eyes White Dragon there, which I assume that's Dylan, just changed his channel name. Are you Dylan, Blue Eyes White Dragon? You're giving me Dylan vibes. Oh god, it's hot. The universe is one big song. We just can't hear, only God can hear all of the notes. Now, so out of the emanation of the Sun Absolute comes the word of God. The radiation, so suns radiate energy, sunshine. Mentek Kit Sohin is the rays of like suns and stars, basically. Planets themselves do radiate, but they radiate this. It's a slightly different, what you call octave or variation of that ray. And even humans, with their photoin zoin, pardon me, burping. The photozoin is like the radiations that, it's human aura, basically. So when a guy's got a lot of photoin zoin, he's got that aura, bro. He's just got that aura. So the radiations issuing from the tetartocosmoses, they called handbledzoin. So this word we know. And so it's Zoin then, Handlet Zoin. Handlet Zoin, we know, is the blood of the astral body, so tetartocosmoses are then astral bodies, or Kesjan bodies, right? Right! So this is interesting. That's interesting. So the whole entire point of creation is to create these higher being bodies that then go back into the Sun Absolute and keep it from keep it from degenerating, basically. Can we come to know the genre of song by listening closely? Oh, to the Song of the Universe. Yeah, it's basically it's kind of like dungeon synth. You just gotta listen real carefully, bro. Just gotta listen real carefully. So, number 6. Oh, so we got more radiations coming out. Because we got to do things in 7. So from the Absolute, from suns, from planets, from humans, their astral bodies also radiate. So the blood of the astral body, the blood is hand-blood Zoin, but it also can emanate its own life force substance into other things, which is interesting. So the radiations then of the planets altogether of any solar system are called Astrol ul uk izoin. That's a word. Hot diggity. Now that one's a weird word because you got astro and then like you've got these 2 L's with just a couple of vowels in them, but you want to go uo, luol, astroluol, uk izoin. Just seriously, I almost feel like just sitting and like just tonguing these words, throwing them around in the mouth, is like a weird experience in and of itself. I gotta say. So this is interesting. So, planets. So there's the second order. The suns emanate Mentek Kit Zuin. The planets themselves radiate Dian Muzoin. But when a sun with a bunch of planets around it together, I guess these two kind of mix, because the radiation of planets together of any solar system, so a solar system itself also is like an entity itself that emanates an energy. But the energy of a solar system is unique to that of a sun and planet, because I guess it's a sun and a planet. It's suns and planets at the same time. Gotta get my Zoins down, bruh. Yeah, yes you do, Tyler, yes you do. So number 7, the common radiations of all newly arisen second-order suns taken together are called poloropheoparal. Okay, so that's interesting. So then there's suns, second-order suns by themselves as well. Ort cloud. I don't know. Nah, it doesn't sound like a cloud. This second-order suns together are also is that going to be like a galaxy? So we got the absolute, suns individually, planets individually, and then a planet with a sun is a solar system, but then a bunch of solar systems are a galaxy. So this, I know it says second order suns taken together emanates this energy, but galaxies themselves would also, in that case would emanate this. Poloropheoparal. Yeah, I pronounced that pretty good. Now, and all the results issuing from the cosmic sources, great and small, taken together, were also then named by the common cosmic Ansanbaluiazar. Oof. It is interesting to remark that concerning this common cosmic Ansanbaluiazar, present-day objective science has also the formula everything issuing from everything and again entering into everything. Independent names were then given also to all the, as they are called, temporarily independent crystallizations. Arising in each of the innumerable cosmoses by the evolutionary and involutionary processes of these fundamental sacred laws. So independent names were given then to all the, as they are called, temporary independent crystallizations. So everything in the... We tier rank these 7 cosmoses, but everything in them is just a temporary crystallization. They arise in each of the innumerable cosmoses by the evolutionary and involutionary processes of fundamental sacred laws. So yeah, so then beings through the processes and understanding the process of the sacred laws, the law of 3 and the law of 7 can move up and down this ray of creation or through these cosmoses. So while he seems to be describing what we know about emanations from galactic bodies which have been theorized to be toroidal in shape, yeah, that's interesting. I'm not sure if he's going to get into toroidalness, but he's definitely a big fan of these celestial influences impacting us more than filthy materialistic science wants us to believe. Yes. I shall not enumerate the names of the large number of these independent centers of gravity which become crystallized in all separate cosmoses, but shall indicate only the names of those definite center of gravity active elements. Okay. Which become crystallized in each separate cosmos, and which have a direct relation with my following elucidations, and namely those which are crystallized in the presences of tetracosmos' astral bodies. So this is important. Being and becoming in flux indeed. And have such a temporarily independent center of gravity. So this is interesting. Because you can see these names here with Echari at the end of them. And we know that Exiohari is... Exiohari is sperm. So these Haris are the equivalent of basically the sexual substance of reproduction, but for beings who live at the scale and level of, say, planets and galaxies. And even the absolute. Proto-Hairy is literally, I guess, the sperm of the Logos, which is interesting. Peace and prosperity, King. Now, so we've got Blue Eyes in the chat dropping some money. I gotta read it. I have some special for you tonight. Blessed be you, pronounced pretty good. Also, you was right. I am, as you said I is. Dylan. You can't escape. You can't escape. Thank you, Blue Eyes. Thank you. In Tetracosmos, the following names were given these into... So we're gonna... Proteohari, I guess, is for protocosmoses. Deftiohari are for anything in the Defterocosmos. Tritiohari... Tritocosmos? Tetrahari... Pianjohari. Hello. That's a weird word. Exiohari, I'm pretty sure that's the human one, and Rizolzarion. So, looks like the word results and Zarion, the name of a femboy from erotic literature, just got smashed together. And we have Rizolzarion, the ultimate end of the sexual substance. And now, my boy, we're getting a now, my boy. After everything I have elucidated to you, we can return to the question. Why and how higher being bodies, or as your favorites name them, souls, so that's interesting, begin to arise in our universe, and why our uni-being common father turned his divine attention particularly to just these cosmic arisings. It's all about the higher being bodies, baby. The point is that when the common cosmic harmonious equilibrium had become regularized? Jesus. See, normal words trip me up now. And established in all those cosmoses of different scales, then in each of these tetracosmoses, astral bodies, i.e. in each separate, relatively independent formation of the aggregation of the microcosmoses, so we are microcosmoses, and we are in an aggregation. So as a microcosmos, we are a bunch of things. We're made out of matter, the elements, we've got biology, we've got systems, energy, vital energy. We also have zodiacal influences, societal influences, our impressions. We're a bundle of energy. But really what we are like cocoons. We are a chrysalis. And some people's chrysalis is just empty. There's nothing inside. But if we do the work, we can create certain transformations and build something up in our chrysalis, in our little microcosm. And that which we build up is something permanent, a tetracosmos, or a Kesdjan body, which had its arising on the surface of the planets, the surrounding conditions on the surface of which accidentally began to correspond to certain data present in these cosmoses, owing to which they could exist for a certain period of time without what is called Secruano. Secruano sounds like kind of a nutrient that they put in like energy drinks as a substitute for sugar. I.e., without constant individual tension, the possibility appeared of independent automatic moving from one place to another on the surface of the given planets. Owing to which they could exist for a certain period of time without what is called Securano. Without individual... So Securano is individual tension. The possibility of independent automatic moving from one place to another on a certain given planet. And thereupon, when our common father, endlessness, ascertained this automatic moving of theirs, there then arose for the first time in him the divine idea of making use of it as a help for himself in the administration of the enlarging world. From that time on, he began to actualize everything. Outtuition in the chat says, out of curiosity, what is your zodiac sign? I don't think I've heard you mention it in any of your videos I've watched. You know, I like to keep it all under wraps. But if you must know, I am a part of the Aquarian Master Race. And to be more specific, Sun sign Aquarius, my rising is also in Aquarius. And my Mercury is also in Aquarius. I'm a triple Aquarius. But then Venus, Mars, Jupiter, and Saturn. Venus, Mars, and Saturn are also in Capricorn. So I'm not sure if you know what a stellium is, but if you look at someone's zodiacal chart and they say have a sun sign that's like Pisces or some bullshit, and then they have three other planets, like let's just say their Mars, their Jupiter, and their Saturn are all in Sagittarius or something. That's a stellium. When you have three planets in another sign that's not your sun sign, it creates something called a stellium, which can overpower your sun sign. But the thing is, I have a stellium in Capricorn, but then I just have Aquarius rising and Mercury in Aquarius anyway. So I have this weird dual kind of, I'm ultra, like abstract concepts, just love it. Delicious. That's my Aquarianness. But then there's this Capricorn thing where it's just, I guess, grinding and enjoys grounding things. Grinding to the top of the mountain. So it's really, in the sense, I have crazy ideas and then I actually grind towards them. So that's something at least. And then I got a few other things, you know, Jupiter and Cancer and Libra and Moon. That ain't good. That stuff ain't good. Could have been better. If my Jupiter was in Gemini, I would have had an air grand trine in my chart. I just would have been a completely different person. The gods, why must you torment me? Ugh. Anyway, let's go. Aquarians in the chat, rise up. Further, for these cosmoses in such a direction that the inevitable, what is called okrualno, i.e. the periodic repetition in them of the completing process of the sacred heptaparaparshinok. Very interesting. So the law of seven repeats inside of us. What does that mean? So you're born, you grow up, and then when you're 7 years old, what happens? When you're 14 years old, what happens? When you're 21 years old, what happens? Well, you realize that every cell in your body has been replenished each 7 years, well, except for some, but there is a continuous periodic repetition of the law of seven going through us. We grow in periods of 7, or we transform in periods of 7. I think it was Steiner trying to put them against the planets. So the first 0 to 7 is the lunar years, and then like 7 to 14 is the mercurial years where you really study, and then like 14 to 21 is the Venusian years where, you know, you're finding love, baby. And then, of course, it actually jumps from like 21 to 42 is the solar years where you find your place under the sun. And then from 42 to 49, Martian years to then fight for that place, so it crystallizes. 49 to 56, Jupiterian, so Jupiter is the king, so then you rule upon what you've basically conquered, you then rule. And then 56 onwards is the period of Saturn, so you're now an old person. So who says I'm old? If you're over 56, Steiner says you're old. You're ruled by Saturn now, bro. Embrace being a sage and helping out the young kings. Might be, sorry, so, yeah. Heptaparaparshinok, sacred process of Heptaparaparshinok repeats, might be accomplished in such a way that under conditions of a certain kind of change in the functioning of the common presences of some of these heterocosmoses, there might be transformed and crystallized besides the crystallizations, which had to be transformed for the purpose of the new common cosmic exchange of substances, also those active elements from which new independent formations might be coated in themselves, with the inherent possibility of acquiring individual reason. So there's more things you can acquire than just a soul, and there's more things that you can crystallize than just a soul. But he's something interesting here. So from the time he began to actualize everything, i.e., I guess our sovereign endlessness, further these cosmoses in such a direction that the inevitable, what is called okruano, the period of repetition in the completing process of the character, might be accomplished in such a way. Okay, so he didn't change anything, and he's already changed things in the process of the Heptaparaparshinok to get creation happening. Might be accomplished in such a way that under conditions of a certain kind of change in the functioning of the common presences, some of these heterocosmoses, there might be so this is also like, I feel like your astral body crystallizes in sevens as well. There are 7 degrees of an astral body, maybe. And so, from starting the work, hey, Fine Free Fine in the chat, howdy. So from this may be some kind of hint from starting the work to, and another guy's here as well. From starting the work to getting an astral body takes a minimum of 7 years, maybe. Maybe. That could be an interesting time, because, you know, there's a lot of people who get into the work in the first 6 months are like really, whoa, and they read all the books, and some people go a little crazy, and they're just like, you know, 2 years in, and they talking to someone 10 years in, and they're like, yeah, I think I've already got the causal body, and it's like, bro, calm down, you're 2 years in, calm your farm. But nonetheless, that's just speculation, that's just my interpretation there, of what he could be, of something he could be saying while also talking about, amongst other things. Now, that this idea first arose just then in our endlessness, we can also see from the words of that sacred canticle, with which at the present time, at all the divine solemnities, our cherubim and seraphim extol the marvelous works of our Creator. Before continuing to relate further how this was actualized, it is necessary to tell you that the functioning of the mentioned common cosmic Iran Umanje is harmonized in such a way that all the results obtained from transformations in different cosmoses localize themselves together, according to what is called qualitativeness of vibrations. And these localizations penetrate everywhere throughout the universe and take a corresponding part in planetary as well as surplanetary formations. Hold up. To tell you that the functioning ops obtained in different cosmoses localize themselves together. Okay. And generally have as the temporary place of their free concentration the what are called atmospheres. Okay. With which all the planets of our megalocosmos are surrounded, and through which connection is established for the common cosmic Iran Umanje, aka the vibes, says our tuition. Yeah, that's pretty funny. Yeah, that's interesting. Because he's sounding like the vibrations themselves create like centers of gravity, but these places of interest are just found within already concentrations that already exist without in the megalocosmos, and I'm just kind of like, why are you mentioning this? That's why I'm confusion, but aren't we all when it comes to this chapter? I remember someone telling me that there was like a Gurdjieff group that spent like 4 weeks or 4 months going through just this one chapter, and the guy who ran the group was basically like, if everything of the fourth way was lost and the only thing you had was not just, if even Beelzebub's Tales, the entirety was lost, but all you had was chapter 39, that would be enough. So it's important to really struggle with the text, shall we say. And so, the further results of this divine attention in respect to the mentioned Tetartocosmos. Oh, here we go. Blue eyes in the chat again. 7 words. You're never what you... 7 words. You're never what... you're never what hear from Jesus. Are you trying to say you're never what you hear from Jesus? I never knew you would depart from me. Jesus is the source of power. Without his spirit power, it's like Skyrim with no mods. Jesus Christ, blue eyes. Jesus is source power. Jesus is the ether acryl now. Tetracosmos consisted in this, that during their serving, or is Jesus more like the Okidanok, could you say? Trigger autocrat messes me up just by looking at the word. Yeah, I know, right, bruh, I know. For some reason, I get that really... I think I've just said it so much that it just flows off the tongue now. But we all get there, our tuition, we all get there. Tetracosm consisted in this, that during their serving as apparatuses for the most great cosmic Trogger Auto-Egocrat. So maybe what he's talking about here is the thing that acts as the medium for the process of the Trogger Auto-Egocrat to play out. So things, actual concentrations of cosmoses, so galaxies, suns, planets, solar systems, can actually feed properly through the law of the Trogger Auto-Egocrat, but how it actually works is through this qualitativeness of vibrations which permeates everywhere and is known as atmosphere. Was connected through atmosphere all throughout the universe. Anyway, let's keep going. Let's keep going. The possibility was obtained in them that from among the cosmic substances transformed through them, both for the needs of the most great common cosmic sacred Trogger Auto-Egocrat, as well as for the supply of substances expended by them for the process of their own existence, and composed exclusively of cosmic crystallizations, which are derived from the transformations of that planet itself, on which the given tetartocosmoses arose. Such results began to be obtained in their common presences under the mentioned conditions as proceed from cosmic sources of a higher order, and consequently composed of what are called vibrations, of greater vivifyingness. Now, from such cosmic results, exactly similar forms began to be coated in their common presences. At first, from the cosmic substances Mentek Kit Zoin, i.e., from the substances transformed by the sun and by other planets of the solar system, within the limits of which the given tetartocosmoses had the place of their arising. Okay, hold on a second, that's interesting. And which cosmic substances reach every planet through the radiations of the said cosmic concentration. So there's something interesting here. Tetartocosmos is a Kesgen body, and from the substances transformed by the sun and of planets of that solar system within the limits of which the given tetartocosmos had the place of their arising. So when you're born on the planet Earth, you're an Earthling, but when your astral body is born, it's a solar system, is kind of a birth, shall we say. So what's the name of our solar system? Let's give it a name. Let's call it Kevin. So an Earthling, someone born on Earth is an Earthling, someone born on Kevin is a Kevinling. So your astral body is a Kevinling. In other words, your astral body belongs to the limits of the solar system. Because what is an astral body? An astral body is made of stars. Astra. A Kesgen body. So, you know, there's still that exiohari. We still need that substance inside of us that's the prime source. But other things, impressions, food 1 and 2. So impressions and our air that we breathe, and we transform those things. Our air is transformed through either pranic techniques or through pore breathing, and our impressions are transformed through self-remembering, or I guess meditation. And through a mixture of these, and of course the exiohari in our body, there needs to be another thing as well, coating this. But it seems like, in some cases it seems like just self-remembering at its highest octave is enough. But it makes me really wonder about planetary magic. Working with stars and the intelligences and kind of trying to speak to planetary intelligences, work with the stars. Because, you know, where the term astral body, the first time it's ever used is in a Neoplatonic text. You know, in fact, the whole idea of bodies, we have a physical body and then we have a body which we traverse the universe with. That's a, well, it's from all cultures. All cultures have some kind of equivalent, but in the West it comes from Neoplatonism. They're the first ones that mention that. And probably the greatest Neoplatonist, Iamblichus. He's one of the greatest Neoplatonists, but he kind of diverged from both Plotinus and Porphyry. Plotinus was, you know, all about, you know, Plotinus had some good things, you know, you should read Plotinus. Porphyry was very much passive contemplation of the absolute. And just doing that, when you die, you know, like attracts like, so if you contemplate the absolute enough, you become like the absolute, then when you die, your essence just gets absorbed into the absolute. Whereas Iamblichus is like, no, we need something more active, and his whole thing was theurgy. Theurgia. And like, what's theurgy? It's connected to ceremonial magic, or ritual magic, or celestial magic of the medieval, or the Renaissance period, and things like that. You know, 3 books of occult philosophy, working with the stars, working with the planets. Usually when we read books on working the stars and planets, people just talk about talismans, but there's this secondary thing behind the work of the talismans, where you see the ultimate talisman work is you see the human being as a talisman, a walking, talking talisman. So instead of getting a talisman of the sun or a talisman of Jupiter, or, you know, you want some extra money, so you get a talisman of Jupiter, or you want to get a, you want to do good in a business deal, or in a law court, you get a talisman of Mercury or something. Do good in love, you get a talisman in relationships, talisman of Venus. Nah. How about you become a walking, talking talisman with all the powers of all the talismans? This is like the secret thing behind talismanic magic that has that Neoplatonic backbone. But talismanic magic is actually astral celestial magic that has this Neoplatonic theurgic backbone to it. And there's something about that stuff that just I always feel like I should mention in regards to this. Gurdjieff, I don't know if I heard some guy mention that apparently at one point he taught people to invoke a spirit or something, but Gurdjieff wasn't down into that much. He was more of a integrate yourself, you know, fix your functions so that they're balanced, you know, get into the essence, build a center of gravity, a psychological moon, an internal moon, you know, awaken the consciousness, reach the 3rd level of consciousness, cultivate self-remembering, and, you know, extract conscience from the subconsciousness, attain the higher cylinders. That was more his kind of thing. He didn't necessarily manipulate the macrocosmos to have effects on the microcosmos. He just seemed to be focused on the microcosmos. So it's definitely not mentioning it as a 4th way thing, but as the unfortunate saying goes, there's more than one way to skin a cat. So there may be more than one way to crystallize an astral body, is all I'm saying. Okay? Now, in this way, the common presences of certain tetatocosmoses began beforehand to be composed of 2 different independent formations, arisen from 2 entirely different cosmic sources, and these began to have a joint existence, as if one were placed within the other. And so, my boy, when similar coatings of previously coated tetatocosmoses were completed and began to function correspondingly, then from time to time, from that time on, they ceased calling tetatocosmoses and began to call them beings. Ah, so this is interesting. This is very interesting. Oh, hello. Blue eyes again. Can you please explain astral projection in a practical way? Like, if you could do it, I imagine you could use it for a profit, to make money. How would you make money from that? Is magic dumb? Lucky charms? No magic. Well, it depends what you mean by magic. High magic and low magic. I don't like the terms black magic and white magic anymore. I just stick with high magic and low magic. So here's the thing about astral projection. 99% of astral projection is actually lucid dreaming. Legit astral projection is like, I mean, you know, those techniques where you go to sleep being conscious and you do certain things and you go into the astral, they're also legit. But when we talk about astral projection, the way an occultist would want to do it is consciously awake during the day. You sit into a chair and then concentrate, and then with will, you leave in your astral body and then go do something. That's the ultimate form of astral projection, and that's not something that everyone can do. Things like magic and, astral workings and consciousness and even the work itself, you should see it in a way as something like singing. I'm shit at singing. If I went and took singing classes, I would never be as good as someone like, I don't know, Justin Bieber, Taylor Swift, P. Diddy. But like, no matter how many singing lessons I take, I'll never get to that level. However, if I took singing lessons for a year, I could probably sing competently enough that it would not be cringe in a group of people. Everyone can get to that level at least. Not everyone's going to be the Taylor Swift in front of, singing in front of everybody. But some people are. And this is one thing about the work and, I guess, spirituality that people hate or to admit. And that's the wheelchair ramp down talking about spirituality. We're all gonna go to the fifth dimension. We're all inside. We're all masters anyway. We've just come here to learn. No. Bullshit. There is no wheelchair ramp. There is an occult aristocracy, and people are not equal. That is a horrifying truth that you begin to realize, and this is why people start to move away from faculties, cities, and things like astral projection, because when you get into those communities enough, you heavily begin to realize there's a massive bell curve. There are some people who, as long as you put in effort and you do the practices, there is this middle ground where you can get results. There are some people, no matter how hard they try, no matter what they do, they will always get minimal results. And on the other end, there are just some people who just got it, who just first try, first week, they astrally project or they do a magical practice and it just works. It just works. And the real question isn't like, you're not, oh, there's the bell curve, what are you going to do? Or no, the bell curve doesn't exist. It's like, no, this is a principle. And so the real question is then, how do you get one person on one side, who no matter how hard they try, nothing happens, to the other side? To then it works every single time, no matter what. What's the objective method here? That's what this is about. And this is what Gurdjieff promotes. It's not his path, this fourth way path. This is not a path that's short and easy and at the end you get treasure. This is a path that's long and difficult, but any results that you get are permanent. That's the key. And that's what I want. I want something that's permanent. That no matter how many eons of the galaxy, of the wheel turning, of karma churning and involution grind against me, I'll never lose the thing that I've crystallized. That's what you want. That's what you want. So, there was something important here. I'm sorry, I'm not sure if I answered your question properly, Blue Eyes, but we gotta move on. In this way, the common presences of certain tetracosmoses. So people don't really, as I mentioned before, people don't really exist. We are a bundle, an aggregate of energies of substance, if you will. Different opinions, societal pressures, biology, zodiacal forces, planetary forces, all of that, and we are a cocoon, a chrysalis. But it's empty. Some people build something up, and a higher being body is born. That higher being body then can reincarnate. So the people who reincarnate, the people who return continuously, there's actually only very few humans in the world. To have an astral body is not a given, it is a luxury. And those astral bodies that continuously come back, they cease to call them tetracosmoses and they start to call them beings. A being to Gurdjieff is something that has an astral body that's permanent, that perpetuates through the world, through the cosmoses, through time, if you will. Outtuition says, I'm not even remotely bothered by that fact. I've always known it was like that because my life is like that in general. I'm fortunate to have a proclivity to learning it. Exactly. We've got to go far, Outtuition. We've got to go far. So Tetracosmos, and begin to call them beings. That's very interesting, because the definition of a being is a very sticky thing. Especially if you're a filthy materialist, then it's like, what is a being? How do this human body, is it a brain? And it's like, they either lose themselves in abstractions or in language, and it's just becomes math games, logic puzzles, friggin' number games, but it's like, a being is something with a Kesdjan body. Simple. Boom. Boom. Which meant two-natured. So being is something that's two-natured. That's interesting. And these same second coatings alone began to be called bodies Kesdjan. Excellent. So that's interesting. So there's something... So Tetracosmos is actually not a body Kesdjan. The Tetarterocosmos is something that's automatically built up. So in the world of astral bodies, some esoteric schools make a differentiation between lunar astral body and solar astral body. A lunar astral body is reflective. The moon reflects the sun. There's no consciousness in it. There's nothing deliberate about it. It merely reflects whatever it's been given. So someone is a cocoon, and maybe enough pressures have been put on them that something crystallizes, but they're not conscious. It would be like, imagine Michelangelo trying to, chisel David out of the rock, but he's blindfolded. It would be very hard to do that. That's what a lunar body is. It's someone blindfolded chiseling something out of a rock. A lunar body is a deformed mechanical creation that perpetuates, but a true... something that's been... a lunar body that is then coated properly in a solar way with consciousness becomes a body Kesdjan, or a solar astral body. This seems to be the different... Obviously, he's not saying that directly, but this is what I'm saying from what I can contrast against other occult systems. That went over my head, but thank you. No problem, Blue Eyes. No problem. Thank you for all the donations, by the way. So, now, when in this new part of these two-natured formations, everything corresponding was acquired, and when all that functioning, which it is proper to such cosmic... And this... Oh, sorry to just go off on a tangent. This is interesting, because if someone with a lunar body has a lunar body, can they get objective reason without a body Kesdjan? Can someone with a body Kesdjan get a body Kesdjan without objective reason? So can you... This is one thing that I think is interesting. A lot of people... There is a part of the work that is linear. Like, you can't just jump from here to there. But there seems to be another part of the work where there are things that you need, but the order in which you get them isn't necessarily set. And so you can get some weird things happening in the galaxies, like idiot gods, i.e. people with solar bodies that don't have objective reason. Or maybe you can get highly intelligent demons, i.e. people who have a Hasnamusian level crystallized lunar body, but with objective reason. You can get things like that, maybe. Hazel in the chat asks, thanks for the explanation. I was having trouble following along. No problem. No problem. I'll try and inject whenever I get there, but whenever I get something, but that doesn't always happen. Does not always happen, especially in this chapter. Now then. Now when acquired, when all that functioning, which is, it is proper to such cosmic arisings, to have was finally established, then these same new formations in their turn on exactly the same basis as in the first cause, and also under the conditions of a certain kind of change of functioning, began to absorb and assimilate into themselves such cosmic substances as had their arising immediately from the most holy Theomertmologos. And so the Theomertmologos, that is the word of God. And similarities of a third kind began to be coded in them, which are the higher sacred parts of beings, and which we now call higher being bodies. So after the Kesdjan body, there's more bodies, a mental body and a causal body. And perhaps even bodies after that. It's bodies all the way up, baby. I mean, you can debate, it's like, are they really separate bodies, or is it just one body that's being coated a bunch of times? Further, when their higher being bodies were finally coated, and all the corresponding functions had been acquired in them, and chiefly when it became possible for the data for engendering the sacred function named objective reason to become crystallized in them. So it seems objective reason is connected to the mental body. So can you obtain it without a solar mental body? So, crystallized in them, which data can become crystallized exclusively only in the presence of those cosmic arisings. And when what is called Raskuano occurred on these... Isn't Raskuano death? On these tetatocosmos or beings, i.e. the separation of the diverse-natured 3-in-1 formations. 3-in-1 formation, so you need you need the... Only 3 bodies according to the Gurdjieff Society. Some people still put in the so you have your physical body, astral body, and causal body. Some people still shoehorn in a mental body every now and then. I think Oak de Boer in his higher being bodies just puts it in there, but it's not talked about. It's one of those things about the bodies. Potentially there are 7 bodies, like Paracelsus has a thing where he talks about the 7 parts of man, and they kind of correspond to these 7 levels. And it's one of those things, if you have 7 bodies, you can only get so anal and autistic about it. A physical body, and then I have an etheric body and an astral body, and the astral body and the etheric body are 2 different bodies. And then what about a mental body? If the astral body has your emotions in it, but then your etheric body is what has your imagination in it, or does it? And it's like, what if you have a mental body as well? Then if you're thinking something, but a visualization appears there, is that in the mental body? But if it's visual, then isn't that in the etheric body? And if you have a causal body, you see where I'm going here? So it's like, when it's like Gurdjieff Society only has 3 bodies, I'm like, yeah, good. There may be more bodies, but to speculate on the bodies without actually having the first, or like the first proper coating of like the solar astral body becomes a bit of a hazard. So if you really want to have like, I mean, maybe in a complete system, there are truly 7 different bodies, and even bodies that go beyond the causal body. But it's as Gurdjieff says, it's like, what's the point in talking about step 72 when you haven't finished step 4 or whatever? It's like, yeah, let's just focus on the Kesjan body, and maybe the causal and mental body can fit if it's appropriate. BLPR in the chat says, you need to explain of this system in one long video. I bet there would be an audience for it. Yeah, well, one day. I'm planning on doing a video like later on, maybe I guess it'll be later on next year, but on like self-remembering. The ultimate guide to self-remembering. I need to put something together about that. We'll see how it goes. I need time. I'm working, so donate more and it'll come out faster. Now we're learning about sacred functions here. So the process of Raskuano on these tetracosmoses or beings, i.e. the separation. So, and 3-in-1 here is interesting, because that means it's no longer a dual-natured being, so a physical body and an astral body. It's a 3-in-1. So you have a physical body, an astral body, and then a secret third thing, another thing, the objective reason. So maybe this is a 3-in-1 as now has the higher being body of a mental body in it. So formations from each other, only then did this higher being part receive the possibility of uniting itself with the cause of causes of everything now existing, i.e. with our most holy Son Absolute, and began to fulfill the purpose on which our all-embracing endlessness had placed his... Ooh. Sorry, I was just going off screen there. Had placed his hope. So receive the possibility of uniting itself. So you need your higher being bodies. You need to be at least a 3-in-1. I guess that would be the causal body then. So you need your astral body, a causal body, and objective reason. And then you have a hope of being united with the cause of causes of everything now existing, i.e. with our most holy Son Absolute, and begin to fulfill the purpose of which our all-embracing endlessness had placed his hope. So we're in kindergarten right now, bro. And once you get your Kesjan, once you get your causal, once you get your objective reason, then you connect with God, and then school really begins. Now, I need to be like an East Coast pastor. Just get that East Coast pastor riz on, and then people will really be donating. Okay. Now it is necessary to explain to you in more detail in what successiveness this first sacred Rascuano... God, what is Rascuano? I'm tripping. I swear, what is death? Is death Tescuano? What did Rascuano mean? So, yeah, he had long previously died. Rascuano is death. Concern, independent psyche. Da 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 da. Oh wait, is it? Bruh. Where's the thingy? Rascuano. Sacred process of Rascuano of beings are in stereo planet. Yeah, he had previously died. Rascuano is death. Okay. How do you remember who you are? Faster. Blue Eyes White Dragon saying all of the important questions. So the whole thing, let me just highlight this so I don't forget where I am. Okay, look, here's the thing, Blue Eyes. Forgetting is connected to sleep, and sleep is connected to death. If you want to conquer death, you got to at least be able to conquer sleep. But if you want to conquer sleep, you also got to conquer forgetting. So first task, our first enemy is to conquer forgetting. What's the core practice of the fourth way? Self-remembering. So this is interesting. It's not necessarily just thinking, and this is the problem with self-remembering and self-observation. When you begin to describe it, it's like, you just think about yourself a lot, right? Like people with high neurosis, it's not a good thing for them. You wanna learn how to self-remember, non-identify. Don't identify with anything. And then you'll be able to extract yourself. Think about it like this. Let me give it in a way of a meditation. If you go to an analog clock with the hands, and just choose like a 5-minute period. So wherever the hand is, just be like, it's on the 1. When it gets to the 2, look at the hand and tell yourself, I'm not going to move a single muscle in my body until that hand gets from the 1 to the 2. And if you do move, you have to start again. So it's like, if you fail, you have to start again, and you have to do it for another 5 minutes. Do you think you could do that? Do you think you could make the whole 5 minutes without moving a single muscle? Because if you do it, what do you notice? You notice that you have to have attention on your body the entire time. Because if your attention slips off, because you're allowed to, this isn't a meditation, you're allowed to fantasize, you can fantasize and go off. But if at one moment you're fantasizing and you forget and your heart goes like that, you have to start the time again. So you have to look at the clock and not move a single muscle in your body until the hand goes from the 1 to the 2. Can you do it? Can you do that? If you can do that, what have you done? You have successfully placed your attention on your motor cylinder. And you have, I shouldn't say train it, but you have had command over that motor cylinder for a period of time. This is important. Why? Because, they say in the work you got to train the cylinders. Once again, there's more than one way to skin a cat. You can train your motor cylinder by doing gymnastics, by doing martial arts. But also the yogis train their motor cylinders. A yogi will train his motor cylinder by sitting in the lotus position for 6 hours without moving a muscle. The ability to do that is completely different from the ability that a gymnast has to do a triple somersault. But the attention that they've placed, an effort that they've placed on their motor cylinder, I'm not going to say it's the same amount, but it's that you have to have that same intensity of attention to either have it spring into a large amount of activity or to restrict it and have it passive requires attention to be placed on the cylinder. So the cylinder has to not move. What happens when you do the same thing for the emotional cylinder? And it's like, not necessarily you're deadening the emotions, but just look at your emotions. You know, when you sit down to meditate, and you know, things come up, thoughts, desires, impulses, your body moves and whatnot, but memory is the big thing that hits you when you try to meditate. Why? Because memory has emotions and a story attached to it. You'll be meditating, and then, you know, that time from school will come up, and you'll be like, oh, cringe. That is a reaction. You can look at something and not get entangled into it. A memory like, oh yeah, remember that time? You're getting entangled into it. If you're averting yourself, if you look at a memory and you go, oh no, not that memory, oh, cringe, that's a reaction. To merely look at memory, to look at something emotion, to have the emotion there and to not become entangled in it, so there's no moving in, there's no entanglement and no aversion, that is the same practice as what I told you to do with the clock in your body, except it's for the emotional cylinder. What about the intellectual cylinder? The whole thing is if you can do this with all three of these cylinders, if you can place your attention on them without falling into any of the functions, and what happens? All of their functions are passive. And this is one key, I'll say, is in the work they say, you know, if you want to really self-remember, if you really want to self-observe, you need to do an activity with all three of your centers. Well, what happens when all three of your centers are passive and your attention is placed on all three of the centers, and there may be functions trying to churn in them, but you've extracted yourself from them, and your attention is laid on all three of the centers. In that moment, all three of your centers are functionally, because they're technically not doing anything, but they are functioning, they're doing the same thing. So for that period of time, all three of your centers are temporarily one center. And you yourself as attention are functioning as the essence, not as something in the human machine in any of one of the centers. You've extracted yourself from it. Self-remembering is not a technique. Unlike self-observation, self-remembering is not a technique. Self-remembering is a state that you get into through technique. I mean, really, in the end, you want to be able to be in self-remembering without method. That's the ultimate Mahamudra Jogsen aim to be in. But anyway, that's one thing you can do first to kind of feel, because you got to have a concept. You can't study self-remembering without doing it. You have to, the state of self-remembering is the third state of consciousness. It's not sleep, and it's not your normal waking consciousness. It's a different state, a completely new, novel state. That's why Ouspensky says something like, self-remembering can feel like when you're a kid and you go to a new place. So you know when you're a kid and you get taken to a new place for the first time, like you're on vacation, you go to it and you're like, wow, and everything's new. That's why he says that. And I've told that to people and they're like, oh, so it's like nostalgia. No. The unique feeling of being in a new place. And that's how I've described it to people in the past, actually. It's the unique. You know how sometimes when you're meditating and you feel something in you, and I call it the unique, this experience, because it's like, and your mind loves to compare things. And so when an experience arises in you that is truly unique, your mind will automatically compare it to something, but it's unique. So it can't compare it to anything. So what does it compare it to? An experience will arise in you that feels like when you're a child, but it's not nostalgia. That is that experience. And that's the best way I can describe it. But you want to do self-remembering, you want to study self-remembering, you have to practice it as well as studying it. Or else your being and your knowing won't sync, and nothing that you ever read about it will ever make sense. I'm just, because you paid money for this, Dylan, Blue Eyes, I'm giving it, I explained that to you, but we got to move on. This isn't a self-remembering live stream. This is a Beelzebub's live stream. I think this is going to be 3 parts. Not gonna lie. This chapter is going to be 3 parts. Now, let's go. At first, on the planet itself, the second being body, i.e. the Kesjan body, together with the third being body, separate themselves from the fundamental planetary body. So this is the process of Raskuano, is the death practice. Sorry, not death practice, it is the process of death. So now it is necessary to explain to you in more detail what the significance of the first Raskuano, oh my god, there's a second Raskuano? You die 2 times. So then occurred on the first Tetracosmos. So when a human being dies, when they go through Raskuano, how it occurs also to how it occurs to someone that is they are called 3 brain beings. Okay. At first on the planet itself, the second being body, i.e. the body Kesjan, together with the third being body, separate themselves from the fundamental planetary body. So he's describing this process of Raskuano, death, and leaving this planetary body on the planet, rise both together to that sphere where those cosmic substances from the localization of which the body Kesjan of a being arises have their place of concentration. So this is interesting. So hence, if you have a lunar body, you get eaten by the moon. You go to the moon. But if you're a planetary magician and you worked with Mercury all your life, you'll probably get absorbed into Mercury. Or the sun, or Jupiter, or Saturn, or if it's all 7 of them, where does your body go? Maybe it goes to the Prima Mobile, or the heaven of the fixed stars, the place after Saturn. Beyond the ring of Saturn is the ring of the fixed stars. But beyond that is the Empyrean, which I guess is the esoteric Christian term that Gurdjieff is using translates to Sun Absolute. So you want to go to the Empyrean. And only there, at the end of a certain time, does the principal and the final sacred Raskuano occur to this 2-natured arising, after which such a higher being part indeed becomes an independent individual with its own individual reason. Okay, interesting. So the third being body is what's really real, not even the astral body. So it seems like the astral body dies. So the final sacred Raskuano occurs to this 2-natured arising, after which such a higher being part indeed becomes... And then finally, that third being body becomes a real individual, becomes a god. Previously, i.e. before the Chut god Litanical period, this sacred cosmic actualization was only after the second process of the sacred Raskuano either thought worthy of uniting with the presence of our most holy Sun Absolute, or went into other cosmic concentrations, where such independent holy individuals were needed. Okay, so this is like Ashiata Shayamash and Jesus Christ. They are beings that did this work, that crystallized an astral body and a third being body, a higher being body, and then they went through the process of the sacred, the final Raskuano, so their physical body died, and then they went through another process of death, where their highest being body became a true individual, and instead of going into the Sun Absolute, they renounced the Sun Absolute and came back into the world to help us. I pay because the continent is worth it. Your work is worth the money. Thank you, Blue Eyes. Thank you so much, man. Thank you. It means a lot. It means a lot. And if at the moment of the approach of the final process of the sacred Raskuano, these cosmic arisings had not yet attained to the required gradation of reason, of the sacred scale of reason, then this higher being part had to exist in the said sphere until it had perfected its reason to the required degree. These cosmic arisings, I don't understand. High gradation of reason, the sacred scale of... It is impossible not to take notice here of that objective terror which occurs to the already risen higher being parts, who, owing to all results in new cosmic processes unforeseen from above, have not yet perfected themselves up to the necessary gradations of reason. The point is that according to various second-grade cosmic laws, the being body Kesjan cannot exist long in this sphere. And at the end of a certain time, this second being part must decompose, so even the astral body will die. No! Irrespective of whether the higher being part existing within it had by that time attained the requisite degree of reason. Okay. So you can get the higher the astral body, the Kesdran body, proper Kesdran body, and you can get the higher being part, but if you don't get that objective reason, and the astral body dissolves, oh shit. Oh shit. Degree of reason. And in view of the fact that as long as this higher being part does not perfect its reason to the requisite degree, it must always dependent upon some Kesdjanian arising or other, therefore immediately after the second sacred Rasguano, every such still unperfected higher being body gets into a state called Tekgekdnel. Bro. Or searching for some other similar two-natured arising corresponding to itself, so that when the higher part of this other two-natured arising perfects itself to the required degree of reason, and the final process of the sacred Rasguano occurs to it, and the speedy disintegration of its Kesdjan body is not yet clearly sensed, this higher being body might instantly enter this other body Kesdjan and continue to exist in it for its further perfection, which perfection must sooner or later be inevitably accomplished by every arisen higher being. But so that's interesting. So Kesdjan body, third being body, and then it obtains higher being reason. But if it doesn't attain higher being reason, and the Kesdjan body dies, it becomes an entity that goes down and finds people with Kesdjan bodies and helps them attain like the higher processes, so that when you discard your Kesdjan body, it can inhabit it. That's really interesting, because this, once again, almost sounds like a type of celestial magic, working with spirits, but it implies that it only makes sense to work with the spirits once you have a Kesdjan body. If you're just a normie normison, and you try to work with spirits, it may not work. And that is why, in that sphere, to where the higher being part goes after the first sacred Rasguano, that process proceeds called Occipukhalevhevnian exchange of the eternal part of the soul, or exchange of the former being body Kesdjan. Oh, we're getting hearts in the chat. Is that my wife watching? Hey honey, can I have another glass of water? Here, you might as well be told that your favorites also have, as it were, a similar representation about the Occipukhalevhevnian exchange. Jesus. Oh, so this exchange is this exchange of the the astral body for other beings. So this is really interesting, because, like, honey, is that you sending hearts in the chat? I need water. SOS. SOS. This is really close to something that Steiner talked about. Hi, honey. This thing that Steiner talked about, because I like Steiner every now and then. But Steiner gets a little cray. But he says some weird stuff sometimes, and sometimes he talks about higher being bodies, and it's cool. He'll talk about astral body and etheric body. I recommend everybody go find Occult Significance of Blood by Steiner, where he talks about the astral body, the etheric body, and the physical body, and the interplay between that and blood. Genuinely, that's a good read. It's a lecture he did that is transcribed, and it's like a 40-page little document that I think you can just buy offline or download the PDF. Occult Significance of Blood by Steiner. That's actually good. But, so he'll say stuff like that, but then he'll go off and he'll say, and you'll be listening to a Steiner lecture, and he'll be saying, oh, thank you so much, honey. Oh my God, yes. Love you so much more. Oh, that's so good. Oh my God. So Steiner will be saying something, and then he'll be like, yeah, Jesus had the same body as Zarathustra. Oh, hello. Is this like building a celestial community, a higher being body group that builds up itself together? Exactly. We all gotta help each other out. And this is also kind of an explanation of why, beings don't necessarily talk to normal people. Like, if, heaven's full of beings, where are they? What are they doing? They're obsessively and autistically trying to get objective being reason, because if they don't, their Kesjun body dies, they're screwed. So higher beings have higher problems. It doesn't mean that they're living in paradise just yet. So they got their own problems, but we got to get up to their level, to a certain level, and then we can contact them, and then we can work with them, and it will make sense. Also, thank you, Tyler, for the 20. Jesus. Woof. But yeah, Steiner will just say things like Muhammad had the same mental body as Krishna, or no, Jesus had like the astral body of Zarathustra and the mental body of Hermes Trismegistus. Like those solar bodies were kept by the White Lodge in stock, and then when a great being like Jesus came, he just got stuffed full of like higher being bodies from other prophets or something. And I'm like, Steiner, are you for real? Are you just saying mad? Are you just talking mad shit? But here, Gurdjieff is actually saying something similar, but not in that way. Not that like friggin' prophets that come have the being bodies of previous prophets. He seems to be saying more that there are ontological beings and spirits, that their astral body dies, but they haven't completed their higher work, so they can't move on. And it may just be that they're stuck. I'm not sure. Maybe they're stuck, or maybe they're going to degenerate somehow. It may just be that they're stuck and they're like, oh shit. And so they'll work with people, not just normal people, but they'll work with people who have a Kesjun body, so that when you attain a certain level, you can just move on, and they can actually take your Kesjun body and then complete their own work. It's a very interesting, celestial community of body exchanges. Almost reminds me of, what was that show that came out in like, I want to say like 218, Altered Carbon? Where like technology has advanced so much that everyone has like spines that have like almost like a SIM card in them, like a deck in them that your consciousness jacks into, and if you die and your deck is recovered, you can just get slotted into another body, and bodies just get called sleeves now. It's like, nice sleeve, bro. And it's like, oh, I got this sleeve from a friend, this is my dad's sleeve, or whatever. And it's just like, a body is a body, and you can just change it out whenever you want. It almost feels like, Altered Carbon is, it's almost like an artist apprehending something macrocosmic and divine, and they just make it something more base, but they translate something into it. But there's a part of them, their highest cylinder is like seeing some principle, but they're turning it into something. It was an interesting sci-fi on Netflix. Yeah, exactly. It's a meat sleeve, Tyler. It was a meat sleeve. I remember watching that show. Got like ultra dark really quickly. Do not recommend. Apparently, it was a book series. The book series was better. I'm not sure how acclaimed. I'm not sure. I didn't really get into the community, so I'm not sure if it was one of those ones where the book people were like, no, they changed everything and it sucks. But I thought the show was alright. It just got really dark. Really dark. Like, things are always violent nowadays, but it also got dark. If you saw the show, you know what I'm talking about. So, here you might as well be told that your favorites also have, as it were, a similar representation about the Kalevnian exchange. And they have even invented... Oh wait, your favorites also have a similar representation. Okay, so humans... He's talking to Hassian here. So humans, we have a concept of it. And they have even invented a very clever name for it, namely metempsychosis, or reincarnation. Oh. And that branch of their famous science, which in recent centuries... So wait, is he even talking about people who leave their physical body and then another person incarnates in? I'm thinking of Lobsam Ramper, the plumber, who the actual guy his soul left his body, and like an incarnated Tibetan monk came in and was like, yo, here's a book, and like wrote the third eye or something. But from what I hear, that guy was pretty wacky. I haven't read it, but it was big in the it was one of those big things in the 70s, like Castaneda, like Lobsam Rampa wrote 18 books. But I think since Tibetan Buddhism has come over in force and like actual lamas have come to the West, those books have just been forgotten. Anyway, let's see what Gurdjieff says about this. And that branch of their famous science, which in recent centuries has been created around this question. There's a science to do with reincarnation? Are you talking about parapsychology, bruh? Also gradually became, and at the present already is, pardon me, one of those minor maleficent factors, the totality of which is gradually making their reason already strange enough. Without this always more and more, as our dear Mullah Nasser Eddin should say, Shurumurumnyan. No, Shuru Murumnyan. Shurumurumnyan. Got it. According to the fantastic branch of this theory, of their science, now called spiritualism, they suppose, among other things, that each of them already has a higher being part, or as they call it, a soul, and that a transmigration must be occurring the whole time to this soul, i.e. something of the kind of this Okipkalevnian exchange of which I have just spoken. Of course, if these unfortunates would only take into consideration that according to the second grade cosmic law called Tenik Doa, or law of gravity, this same being part, if in rare cases it does happen that it arises in them, instantly rises after the first Raskuano of the being, or as they express it, after the death of being from the surface of their planet, and if they understood that the explanations and proofs given by this branch of their science of all sorts of phenomena, which proceed as it were among them, their thanks to those fantastic souls of theirs were only the fruits of their idle fancy, then they would already realize that everything else proved by this science of theirs is also nothing else but Mullah Nasser Eddin's twaddle. So this is really interesting because he's mirroring Eliphas Levi's opinion on Spiritism. I forget the guy's name. I think it was Andrew Mackenzie, Kenneth Mackenzie. I think it was Kenneth Mackenzie was a big Rosicrucian back in the day, and not sure if he was a direct student really, but he was in correspondence and he was friends with Eliphas Levi, and he considered Levi his senior in a sense. And there's some exchange that they had, like Mackenzie came to Eliphas Levi's house in Paris, or wherever he was living, in France at the time, and they had a talk, and one of the things Mackenzie asked Levi was his opinion on Spiritism. He was like, those seances, the spirits that appear in seances, are they the spirits of the humans? And instead of saying yes or no, Levi just said, if you had, he just said this, he was like, okay, look, you have like an aquarium with like fish, little aquarium, little, oh fuck, what do you call it? Little box of water? It's not an aquarium. A little, just say an aquarium with fish in it. You get a vessel filled with oil and you put it at the bottom of your little aquarium. You break the vessel. Where does the oil go? And Mackenzie's like, it rises to the top. And so Levi's like, okay, so if you have a little fishbowl, fishbowl, thank you, Tyler. If you have a little fishbowl, and you break a vessel of oil at the bottom, the oil will rise to the top. Okay, so in the world, when you break a human's body, where does the soul go? And that's how he basically answered Andrew Mackenzie. So he wasn't a big fan of Spiritism either. And as I understand it, in the world of spiritualism and Spiritism, there's actually like a mini fight that they had to do with this, because a part of them, one section of them were all Christians. And as Christians, they were all heavy on there is no reincarnation, there is the one life. So to them, the spirits that were being invoked were like lost souls that then they were helping kind of send to heaven. Whereas other people who believed in reincarnation, it's like, well, actually, if you're invoking someone and they appear, and it's like a king from 600 years ago, shouldn't he have reincarnated by now? Like, what's going on? So there's one faction that actually said it's something else. These spirits that you're invoking in seances aren't who they say they are. Or at the very least, they are, a remnant, a remnant lunar body, an etheric body of something. If it's not a dark spirit, then it's at least just some like psychic waste of the person, an impression, a memory. It's not the real person in any regard. But yeah, so Gurdjieff also has this opinion. He's like, seances, lame. Now, as regards the first two lower being bodies, namely the planetary body and the body Kesdje, then after the first Raskuano of a being, his planetary body, being formed of microcosmoses, or of crystallizations transformed on the planet itself, gradually decomposes and disintegrates there, on that same planet, according to the certain second-grade cosmic law called, again, Tarn-Otholtur, into its own primordial substances from which it obtained its rising. As regards the second being body, namely body Kesdje, this body, being formed of radiations of other concentrations of tritocosmoses and of the sun itself of the given solar system, and having entered after the second process of the sacred Raskuano into the sphere just mentioned, also begins gradually to decompose, and the crystallizations of which it is composed go in various ways into the sphere of its own primordial arising. So let me just read that again. So this is about what the astral body does when the planetary body dies. So regard to the second, this body being formed of radiations of other concentrations of tritocosmoses. So in this, tritocosmoses were planets, and of the sun itself of the given solar system, and having entered after the second process of the sacred Raskuano into the sphere just mentioned, also begins gradually to decompose. Okay. And the crystallizations of which it is composed go in various ways into the sphere of its own primordial arisings. Okay, so it dissolves back into the stars if you don't do anything with it. But the higher being body itself, being formed of crystallizations received directly from the sacred Theomert Logos, the Word of God. So this is the thing. We need the Christ within us. The God Word is Christ. We need the Word to incarnate within us. We need that third being body. I guess this is the causal body. We need to Christify our causal body to have something truly permanent. The Theomert Logos into the solar system, within the limits of which the being arises and where his existence proceeds, can never decompose, and this higher part must exist in the given solar system as long as it does not perfect itself to the required reason. So you get region locked into your solar system if you don't have objective reason when you become immortal. To just that reason, which makes similar cosmic formations what are called Irankipak, i.e. such formations of the mentioned most sacred substances as can exist and be independent of Kesdjenian arisings, and at the same time not be subject to what are called painful influences from any external cosmic factors whatsoever. And so, my boy, as I have already told you, after these cosmic arisings had perfected their reason to the necessary gradation of the sacred scale of reason, they were in the beginning taken into the Sun Absolute for the fulfillment of roles predestined for them by our Creator Endlessness. So as soon as you arrive into heaven, you got to make it, you got to earn it for reals. You got to get that higher being body immortalized, and you got to get that objective reason. Once you get that, you go into the absolute. Once you're there, God's like, I got you. I got the perfect role for you. Perfect in every way. And you're like, hell yeah. Hell yeah. It is necessary to tell you that concerning the determination of the degrees of individuality, our cherubim and seraphim, so I guess cherubim and seraphim are just like the people who have just perfected themselves up to that level. Also then, at the very beginning, established, but there also seems to be this hierarchy of like beings like, you know, where's Beelzebub himself? Where's all these archangels, Sakaki and whatnot? What's the deal with them? How do they fit into this? Let's see what he says. So from also then, the very beginning, established that there's still now existing determinator of reason, which is applied to the determination of gradations of reason, or more exactly, the totality of self-awareness, of all separate large and small cosmic concentrations, and by which not only are the gradations of their reason measured, but there is also determined their, as it is called, degree of justification of the sense and aim of their existence, and also the further role of each separate individual in relation to everything existing in our great megalocosmos. This sacred determinator of pure reason. So this is pure reason, not our mere, you know, go to uni and do one course on Aristotle reason. Pure reason without any of our dysfunctions interfering with it. Pure reason comes from, I guess, the higher intellectual cylinder. So the sacred determinator of pure reason is nothing else. So we would call this supra reason. S-U-P-R-A. So not super reason, it's not like just normal reason that's just churning really fast. It's supra reason. So reason that is above normal categorical reason, but at the same time it doesn't violate our reason. So this sacred denominator, pure reason, is nothing else than a kind of measure, i.e. a line divided into equal parts. Oh, ho, whoa, whoa. One end of this line is marked by the total absence of any reason. Okay, line divided into equal parts. Someone's been reading Plato. Anyone get that Plato reference? So the one end of the line is marked as the total absence of any reason, i.e. absolute first calm. And at the other end, there is indicated absolute reason, i.e. the reason of our incomparable creator endlessness. This is really interesting. Really interesting. This is also kind of like, reminds me of in Dune, the whole idea between, it's like in the second Dune book, Dune Messiah, where they get the Gola, they create a Gola of Duncan, Idaho, and call it Hate, H-A-Y-T. But the Gola is trained to be a Mentat and a Zen Sunni priest. So it's like Zen Sunni, it's funny, Zen. But it's basically someone who has reached that state of calmness, but also a Mentat who just has Giga-Chad reasoning capabilities, but they have them at the same time. So that's something really interesting. Very interesting to have both ends of the stick at once. Yeah, you got to read Dune, bro. He does a lot of interesting combos. Frank Herbert he's esoteric. Don't be fooled by the first book where it seems like our religions are all made up and it has this kind of materialism to it. Nah, it's what he's got some esoteric stuff going. He's got, in the third book he mentions the Diamond Thunderbolt path. And by the fourth book it's basically just a text on pure like political philosophy and just his descriptions of consciousness and like spatial consciousness that sees time. It's just, oh my god. His theory on history. R.I.P. Hegel would have loved Dune. Now, in this place, I think it might as well be explained to you further about the various kinds of sources present in the common presences of all three-brained beings for the manifestation of being reason. In every three-brained being in general, irrespective of the place of his arising and the form of his exterior coating, there can be crystallized data for the three independent kinds of being mentation, the totality of the engendered results of which expresses the gradation of his reason. So we've been focusing through here on crystallizing higher being bodies, but how do we get more reason? So in every three-brained being in general, irrespective of the place of his arising and the form of his exterior coating, there can be crystallized data for three independent kinds of being mentation. The totality of the... So there's three types of reason, eh? The totality of the engendered results of which expresses the gradation of his reason. So there's a gradation of reason, so you can potentially make categories for different types of reason, but in the end it's a gradation. So like the color spectrum. You can have red and you can have orange, but where does red begin and orange stop, or red stop and orange begin? In like an absolute sense, it may be arbitrary, but when you, in another sense, it's helpful to distinguish all the different colors, all the different levels of reason. Data for these three kinds of being reason are crystallized. So is it just you crystallize data and that gives you more reason? In the presences of each three-brained being. So crystallized data is data that becomes a part of being itself. That should be mentioned. So this is something that I should mention as well. What did I mean just then when I said crystallized data becomes a part of your being? When do you know something? What is the difference? And this is two terms here. What is the difference between technique and skill? Because anyone can learn a technique. I can show you how to swing a golf club. I can show you how to, do a punch. You can be shown a technique for singing, shown a technique for playing a piano. What's the difference between technique and skill? Because you can be shown how to punch like a boxer, and you know the technique. But, do you have a boxer's skill? Like, if you get showed all of the different techniques of a boxer, you need this kind of footwork, you need this jab and this cross. Okay, get in the ring now. And then you try to perform it and it all falls apart. So I'll use, maybe piano playing as a better example. So there's that hierarchy of learning. There is unconscious incompetence, conscious incompetence, conscious competence, and then the highest one, unconscious competence. So when you start playing the piano, you're bad, and you don't even you don't even know why. In a sense, you're just like, why? Pling plong pling. Then the next level is you're still bad, but you know why you're bad. It's like, I'm fucking up here and there, and clink. I'm getting it wrong. I just need to get the timing right. The next level is conscious competence. So you can do it. I can play the song, but you need to be conscious and have your attention on it, or else you'll fuck up. Next is unconscious competence. That's when you're so good at it, you don't even need to look at the keys, you can just play the song. That level of skill, that is when that technique has crystallized within you. You can then call it skill. That is what he means when it's like reason being data has crystallized in the presence of the three brain beings. It means it's not just that you learned a little. I learned some top 10 facts today. I read some trivia. It's like, no, something embedded in you and became a part of your being. That's what that means when something crystallizes in you. Just to clear that up for you guys. And chat, Blue Eyes, White Dragon, White Lightning, attack. Frank Herbert be like straight up High Wizard, Dark Magician, or Blues Magician? Lol. True River King says, Blue Eyes, how do you self-remember faster? Remember always the certainty of your own death. Hey, Memento Mori, that's a great one. And Surf Says, skill is the technique becoming part of your nature, subconscious. Yeah, that's another way of saying it. That's another way of saying it. But I mean, so that, yeah, it's like it becomes a part of your being in and of itself. You can still be conscious of it. It's not necessarily that it just sits in your subconscious forever. Because subconscious is like you don't even know you have it in a sense. Subconscious would be more like someone who has never played the piano and it's like, I don't know how to play, and they play and they're amazing, and it's like, oh, what am I doing? Am I doing it right? And they're just a natural genius. That was when the skill was already embedded in their subconscious pre-being born. Which I guess they're, in a sense, that's what talent and genius is. A build-up of being data in your higher being body over time. Now, so, crystallized in the presence of each three brain being depending upon how much, by means of the being park dog duty, the corresponding higher being parts are coated and perfected in them, which should, without fail, compose their common presences as a whole. The first highest kind of being reason is the pure or objective reason, which is proper only to the presence of a higher being body, or to the common presences of the bodies themselves of those three brain beings in whom this higher part has already arisen and perfected itself, and then only when it is the what is called center of gravity, initiator of the individual functioning of the whole presence of beings. Okay. The second being reason, which is named Okiar... good, Jeff. Why are you doing this? Okiart I Tox. I'm not even gonna try to master that one. So the second being reason, which is named this, can be in the presence of those three-brained beings in whom their second being body, Kesjin, is already completely coated and functions independently. So people who have completely mastered their astral body have a higher being reason, but not as high as a being reason of a perfected master, who definitely has individuality. As regard the third kind of being reason, this is nothing else but only the action of the automatic functioning which proceeds in the common presences of all beings in general, and also in the presences of all surplanetary definite formations, thanks to repeated shocks coming from outside, which evoke habitual reactions from the data crystallized in them corresponding to previous accidentally perceived impressions. So this is us. This is us. This is people who have reached an intermediate development, and this is Giga Chad gangsters direct from the Sun Absolute who have sacred individuality and choose to come down again and help us all. But here's where we are. This is our being reason. Oof. Oof. Now, my boy, in my opinion, before going on to a more detailed explanation of how their higher parts were then coated and perfected in the common presences of the first tetracosmoses, as well as in the common presences of those who are afterwards named beings, it is necessary to give you more information about the fact that we beings arisen on the planet Karatus, and also the beings arisen on your planet Earth, are already no longer such polymedectic beings as were the first beings who were transformed directly from the tetracosmoses, that is to say, beings called polymordectic, or as it is still now said, monoenithits, but are beings called Keschapmartnian, i.e. nearly half beings, owing to which the completing process of the sacred heptaparaparshinok does not proceed at the present time through us, through your favorites, through us or your favorites, through the three brain beings of the planet Earth, exactly as it proceeds in them. And we are such Keschapmartnian beings, because the last fundamental stopinder of the sacred heptaparaparshinok, which at the present time, almost all beings of the megalocosmos, called the sacred Ashigiproteheri, is not in the centers of those planets upon which we arise, as it occurs in general in the majority of the planets of the great megalocosmos, but is in the centers of their satellites, which for our planet Caratus is the little planet of our solar system, which we call Prenorkipouch, and for the planet Earth is its former fragment, now called the Moon and Anulios. Kes Chapmartnian greater than Hannes? No. So Tyler asked about Kes Chapmartnian. So that's basically, they have reached on their planet a different level of being, or they are a different category of being. I'm not sure if it just means that that's everybody on their planet has a astral body, but he's saying something here about the last fundamental stophinder of the sacred Heptaparapashanok. So do, re, mi, fa, mi and fa have a stophinder in between it, and then fa, sol, la, si, and then between si and the do of the next octave is that stophinder. So they have something in that stophinder which completes that octave. So the whole thing about that is hydrogen C12 diagram in Ouspensky. Ouspensky talks about the mi-fa semitone missing, and how that stophinder stops the impression line and even the air line from transforming and creating more hydrogens. But he mentions the last stophinder, that he mentions the hydrogen C4 line, and basically just says, you know, from the food line, the DO 768 to hydrogen C12, he then asks Gurdjieff in Search of the Miraculous, is there something to take this to another octave? Because it ends at C, C12. So potentially, there is something to fulfill that stophinder, and then to make it go into what, like a DO frickin', to turn at least, maybe not into a DO 6, but into a 6 hydrogen. Or into just another completely different octave. And Gurdjieff says, yes, and I'll tell you about it later. And then Ouspensky never writes about it. If Gurdjieff did say it, Ouspensky doesn't put it in the book In Search of the Miraculous. He just mentions that that was mentioned. So this is an interesting thing, that last fundamental stophinder of the sacred Heptaparapashanok, which at the present time almost all beings... He goes off and starts talking about it. It makes me wonder if a being Kes Chapmartnian has something in them that, like, fulfills that, and so allows their C12 hydrogen to go to another octave, which would help in crystallizing a higher being body. So I am going to go out on a limb and saying this is a bit where he basically says everyone on Earth is a loser, and the people on planet Karatas are awesome because they have higher being bodies and people on Earth don't, usually. That's what I think he's saying here. That's what I think he's saying here. But he's also mentioning something important about the moons. That the fundamental... It is not the centers of those planets upon which we arise, as it occurs in general in the majority of the planets of the great megalocosmos, but is in the centers of their satellites, which for our planet, Karatas, is the little planet of our solar system, called that, and for the planet Earth is the fragment. So there is some similarity, because he's seeming to say that in planets in the cosmos, there is a center of gravity within a planet, but on Karatas and the Earthlings, our planet, we don't have that center of gravity in our planet. It's actually in a moon. And Karatas is also like that, which is interesting. So thanks to this completing process of the sacred Heptaparapashanok for the continuation of the species, for the continuation of the species, that's how you know he's talking about hydrogen C12, because he's talking about sperm, for instance, proceeds not through one being, as it proceeds with the tetrarter cosmoses, but through two beings of different sexes. So he's talking about sexitan, by us called octavus. Octavus. There are only two octavuses, Gurdjieff, Beelzebub's Tailsaw's grandson, and Pacifus. Oh, Octavus and Pacifus as man and woman. Okay, there you go. Lamal. I might say here that there even exists in our great megalocosmos a planet on which the law of the law of Heptaparapashanok carries out its completing process for the continuation of the species of three-brained beings through three independent individuals. You might as well be acquainted somewhat in detail with this uncommon planet. Hold on. He said something here. about the tetatocosmoses, so the lunar bodies, the lunar astral bodies. So it seems like higher being bodies can kind of generate higher being bodies out of themselves via themselves, but planetary bodies need a male and a female. It seems like to be what he's saying there. And now he's going to tell us about a wacky planet with 3 genders. This planet is called Modictheo and belongs to the system of the protocosmos. Okay, what? Bruh. He's saying the Sun Absolute is like the protocosmos. But now there's a planet. Okay, so the Sun Absolute seems to be a literal sun in the center of the universe. And it's the protocosmos. And so there's a planet that moves around the Sun Absolute that has 3 genders on it. So this is interesting. Let's listen up. Beings arising on this planet are 3-brained, like all other 3-brained beings arising on all the planets of our great megalocosmos, and in the exterior appearance are almost similar to us, and at the same time are also so considered by all others the most ideal and perfect of all the innumerable various formed exterior coatings of 3-brained beings in all our great universe. Okay. So these guys are the most perfect. These guys are all Swedish supermodels. And all our now existing angels and archangels and most of the sacred individuals nearest to our common Father Endlessness arise just upon this marvelous planet. Damn. The transformation through them of the cosmic substances required for the common cosmic trogo-auto-egocratic process, according to the law of the Heptaparaparshinok, of the sacred law, Heptaparaparshinok, reference to angels naturally born with 3 aligned centers. Okay. There's some interesting things as well, like in Epic of Gilgamesh. There's that whole thing about how Gilgamesh is born 2/3 god. So if his mum was a human and his dad was a god, shouldn't he just be half god? But he's 2/3. So there's something interesting where it's like there's these humans being in thirds. So the transformation, yeah. Trogo-auto-egocratic process, according to the sacred law Heptaparaparshinok, proceeds on the same principle on which it proceeds through our common presences and also through the presences of your favorites, the 3-brained beings breeding on the planet Earth. For the continuation of their species alone does this sacred law affect its completing process through 3 kinds of beings, wherefore such 3-brained beings are called Sorry, what the hell is this? A K and an R and a K in the middle of a word? Bruh. Triacricomnian separately. However, just as among us, beings of different sexes are called activus and passivus, lol, active and passive, or are called on your planet, man and woman, so they're on the planet Modictheo, they call the beings of different sexes Matna, Sperna, and Okina. And although externally they are all alike, yet in their inner construction they are very different from each other. Jesus is like a spiritual box cutter, like fresh blade. Yes, blue eyes. So on this planet they got 3 genders, but everyone looks the same. Amogus. The process of the continuation of their species proceeds among them in the following manner, but this is how they do it. All 3 beings of different sexes simultaneously receive sacred El Murano, or as your favorites say, conception. Okay, so they all conceive at the same time, through a special action, and for a certain period they exist with this sacred El Murano, or conception, apart from one another, entirely independently, but each of them exists with very definite intentional perceptions and conscious manifestations. And later, when the time approaches for the manifestation of the results of these conceptions, or when, as your favorites say, the time of birth approaches, there becomes evident in all these 3 uncommon beings, as it is called, an aklonatistician longing for each other. Or as your favorites would say, there appears in them a physico-organic attraction. And the nearer the time of this being manifestation or birth approaches, the more they press close to each other and ultimately almost grow onto each other. And thereupon, at one and the same time, they actualize in a certain way these conceptions of theirs. Whoa, hold up. So they're longing for each other. And then they become attracted to each other, and then the nearer the time of this being manifestation or birth approaches, the more they press close to each other and ultimately just grow onto each other. What? So they conceive together, they split up into 3 different places, gestate for a bit, and then they come back together and mold into one being and give birth. Bruh, that sounds crazy. Actually, that sounds like, if we think about that as the 3 centers, that actually sounds like the perfect kind of mentation. Like when you gain new data, it should strike all of your centers, and it should be received and studied by each of your centers, and then it comes together as one thing, and then comes out as the kind of knowledge that you give to someone else. That's a metaphor. That's a metaphor for something. And so during their actualization of their conception, of all 3 conceptions merge one with another, and in this way there appears in our megalocosmos a new 3-brained being of such an uncommon construction. Yeah, I bet it's uncommon. And 3-centered beings of this kind are ideal in our megalocosmos because at their very arising they already have all the being bodies. So someone who's gestated like this will have a planetary body, a Kesgen body, and a causal body, all in one. Hot diggity. So they just need to worry about basically being reason. They don't need to worry about anything. These lucky... Why can't I be born there? Why can't I be born there? And they have all 3 being bodies. Because the producers of such a being, namely Martna, Sperner, and Okina, each separately conceives the arising of one of the 3 being bodies. And owing to their special corresponding being existence, they aid the sacred Heptaparaparshinok to form the given being body in themselves to perfection, and afterwards, at the moment of appearance, merge it with the other being bodies into one. Damn. Note, by the way, my boy, that the beings arising on that incomparable and marvelous planet have no need, like the 3-brained beings arising on other planets of our megalocosmos, to coat their higher being bodies with the help of those factors with which our Creator designed as means of perfecting, namely those factors which we now call conscious labors and intentional sufferings. What is the merging for? So they merge because basically one is pregnant with the physical, one is pregnant with the astral, one's pregnant with the causal, and they merge together so that when the baby's born as one being with all 3 bodies contained in themselves. So they don't need to do the work, which he's saying here. There's no conscious labor and intentional suffering that they need to go through. They're just they're just born on the finish line. Bruh, I'm pissed. Now, my boy, to continue the further, more detailed elucidation concerning the process of the transformation of cosmic substances through beings in general, we shall take as an elucidatory example the common presences of your favorites. Although the process of the transformation of substances, of the continuation of the species by means of us or by means of the common presences of your favorites, does not proceed exactly as it proceeded in the first tetracosmoses, who were transformed into beings, nevertheless we shall take them as an example, since the process itself of the transformation of cosmic substances for the needs of the most great common cosmic trocho auto-egocratic proceeds through their common presences exactly as it proceeded through the first tetracosmoses. At the same time, you will acquire information concerning several other small details of the strange particularities of their psyche, and also gain information relating to how they in general understand and how they regard their being duty in the sense of serving the common cosmic process of Iran Manje, destroying for the beatification of their own belly every kind of law conformable for seeing actualization for the welfare of the whole megalocosmos. Oof. tripping out here. We may actually split this into 3 parts. I may, actually, you know what? Let me finish this, because there's an And Now My Boy coming up. As for the particularities of the transformation of cosmic substances, thanks to which the continuation of the species of different beings at the present time proceeds differently, for the present I will say only this, that the cause depends on the place of concentration of the sacred Ashagiprotehari, i.e. on the place of concentration of those cosmic substances, which are the results of the last stupinda in the common cosmic Ansan-Baluaza, the Song of Creation. Now, my boy, I'm going to just stop there. 2 hours in, we got 40 pages left. I'm tired, bros. I'm tired. I'm gonna call it there. And we'll, hopefully, we'll finish it next week. Oh, God. Thank you all for coming along, learning about all the, those cosmic rays and those 3 genders and whatnot. We'll definitely pick it up again in the next one. Same time next week. Remember, this is the important chapter. This is the big one. And we're almost through it. We're almost there to be concluded next week. See y'all next time.